The neon lights of the Undercity cast long shadows across the grimy alleyway as Kalen pressed his back against the cold metal wall. His enhanced hearing, a relic from his days as a soldier, picked up the telltale hum of Aegis Corp Scout drones 2 blocks away. 6 months since he'd deserted, and they still hunted him with the persistence of a machine, which, he supposed, was exactly what they were. Kalen adjusted the energy knife concealed in his sleeve and slipped deeper into the shadows. The Undercity, lowest level of New Shanghai, was a haven for those who wished to disappear. Failed tech, failed people, all jumbled together in a melting pot of desperation and survival. It wasn't pretty, but it kept him alive. He'd been surviving on odd jobs, mostly security work and occasional data retrieval for the less reputable information brokers. Not glamorous, but it paid for his small apartment and the various mods that kept his military augmentations functioning without Aegis Corp's maintenance protocols. The sound of combat disrupted his thoughts. Not the clean, efficient violence of corporate security, but something messier. Moving silently, he peered around the corner to see 5 Razorhead gang members surrounding a solitary figure. The Razorheads were mid-level tech scavengers, known for harvesting augmentations from unwilling donors. Their chrome-plated scalps gleamed in the artificial light as they closed in on their prey. Their target was a woman, slender and seemingly out of place in the Undercity. Even in the poor light, Kalen could tell she wasn't local. Her movements were too precise, her stance too balanced. She wore simple clothes, a gray jumpsuit under a dark coat, but they seemed to shimmer slightly with what might be embedded tech. Most striking were her eyes, visible even at this distance, an impossible violet that seemed to hold their own light. Just hand over the tech, pretty thing, and maybe we'll leave some of you intact, the largest Razorhead growled, tapping a shock baton against his palm. The woman's voice was calm, almost detached. Please walk away. I have no quarrel with you. The gang members laughed, and their leader lunged forward. What happened next should have been impossible. The woman moved with inhuman speed, sidestepping the attack and delivering a precise strike to the man's neck. He dropped instantly. The others rushed her all at once. Kalen should have walked away. This wasn't his fight. But something about the woman, the strange grace with which she moved, the odd shimmer that occasionally rippled across her skin, intrigued him. Plus, he'd never liked the Razorheads. His decision made, he drew his pistol and fired a precision shot that clipped the shoulder of the gang member closest to the woman. The energy pulse didn't kill, but it sent the man reeling backward, his neural system temporarily overloaded. 3 against 2, Kalen called out as he stepped from the shadows. Better odds. The woman's eyes met his for a fleeting moment. Surprise, assessment, and something else he couldn't identify flashing across her face before she returned her attention to the remaining attackers. Together, they made short work of the Razorheads. Kalen employed the brutal efficiency of military training, while the woman moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost choreographed. When the last gang member lay unconscious, Kalen holstered his weapon and faced the stranger. Up close, her features were even more striking. Perfect symmetry and unblemished skin that hinted at genetic engineering or extensive modification. But those eyes, they held something ancient, something that didn't match her youthful appearance. You fight well for someone who looks lost, he observed. And you intervene in fights that aren't yours, she countered, her voice melodic yet guarded. Why? Kalen shrugged. 5 against 1 seemed unfair. Plus, I'm curious what you have that they wanted badly enough to risk a public assault. The woman studied him intently, her gaze unsettling in its intensity. You're military. No, ex-military. Deserter, perhaps? His hand drifted toward his concealed knife. What makes you say that? Your movements, your augmentations. They have a signature. She gestured vaguely at his right arm, where his military-grade neural interface was hidden beneath his sleeve. Aegis Corp, if I'm not mistaken. The name of his former employers sent ice through Kalen's veins. If you're with them. I'm not, she interrupted quickly. But like you, I'm being hunted. A drone buzzed overhead, its search pattern systematic. Both of them instinctively pressed deeper into the shadows. "We should move," Kalen muttered, already scanning for the nearest exit route. "Agreed." The woman hesitated, then extended her hand. "I'm Lyra." "Kalen." He didn't take her hand. "There's a safe place 2 blocks east. We can talk there." This safe place was a small underground bar called the Blackout, known for its signal jammers and strict no-questions policy. They secured a booth in the back corner, where the ambient noise would mask their conversation. "So," Kalen began after ordering 2 synthetic whiskeys, "what brings someone like you to the Undercity?" Lyra's eyes darted around the room, cataloging exits and potential threats before returning to meet his gaze. "I need to get off-world, to a place called Sanctuary." "Never heard of it." "Few have. It's not on official navigation charts." Kalen leaned back, his cybernetically enhanced eyes analyzing her micro-expressions. "And what's at this sanctuary that's worth risking the Undercity for?" "Safety," she replied simply. Then, after a pause, "I have a proposition for you, Kalen. You helped me tonight without knowing me. That suggests either remarkable kindness or remarkable desperation." "Let's go with desperation," he said dryly. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I need a protector. Someone with military skills who knows how to stay off the grid. Someone who might want to disappear completely from Aegis Corp's radar." Kalen's interest was piqued despite his caution. "And what do I get in return?" "Data. Technology. Specifically, access codes that can erase your identity from every Aegis database. Make you truly free." He tried to mask his surprise, but knew she'd caught it. Such data was worth a fortune, or would be, if it was real. "That's quite an offer from someone who just escaped a mugging." "Those weren't muggers," Lyra said quietly. "They were scouts, low-level operatives sent to confirm my presence. More will come." "Who's hunting you?" She hesitated, looking down at her untouched drink. "It's complicated, but if I reach Sanctuary, neither of us will need to run anymore." Kalen studied her, trying to see past the perfect facade. Every instinct told him this woman was dangerous. Not necessarily to him, but dangerous nonetheless. Yet something about her vulnerability seemed genuine. "There's something else you should know," Lyra continued before he could respond. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I carry something within me, something that makes me valuable to certain parties. Something dangerous." "What kind of dangerous are we talking about?" Her eyes met his, and for a moment he glimpsed something in their violet depths, a flicker of something vast and ancient and terrifying. "I have what some would call a final form, a state of being that no one has witnessed and survived. I need you to promise that no matter what happens, you will never force me to use it. Never put me in a position where it's my only option." The gravity in her voice made the hairs on Kalen's neck stand up. She wasn't threatening him. She was warning him. "That's quite a caveat," he said slowly. "It's a necessary one." Her slender fingers gripped the edge of the table. "I don't wish to harm anyone, especially not someone helping me." Kalen weighed his options. He was running low on funds and contacts. Aegis Corp was closing in. If what Lyra offered was legitimate, it could be his only way out. And despite the obvious danger, he felt an inexplicable connection to this strange woman. A recognition of similar wounds, perhaps. "I'll help you get to Sanctuary," he finally said. "And I promise not to push you toward whatever this final form is. But no secrets that could get me killed. If there's danger ahead, I need to know." Relief softened her features. "Thank you. I'll tell you everything I can." Their moment of agreement was shattered by the bar's alarm system activating. The proprietor's voice cut through the sudden silence. "Aegis security sweep incoming. 3 minutes to lockdown." Kalen cursed under his breath. "They shouldn't have traced me here." "They're not looking for you," Lyra said grimly. "They're looking for me. We need to leave. Now." They barely made it out through the service tunnel before armored Aegis operatives swarmed the entrance. Kalen led them through a maze of back alleys and maintenance shafts, finally emerging near the spaceport. "We need a ship," he muttered, scanning the docks. Lyra pointed to a battered cargo hauler. "That one. The security protocols are outdated." "How do you know that?" Instead of answering, she approached the ship's external terminal and placed her hand on the screen. The interface flickered, code racing across it too fast for human eyes to follow. Seconds later, the entry ramp descended. "What did you just do?" Kalen asked, suspicious again. "I'll explain once we're off-world," she promised. "But we need to hurry." They were barely through the atmosphere when the first Aegis interceptor appeared on their sensors. Kalen, thankful for his pilot training, pushed the old hauler beyond its intended limits. They escaped by diving into an asteroid field that the military ships were too bulky to navigate safely. Hours later, in the relative safety of deep space, Kalen set the autopilot and turned to Lyra. "Time for some answers." Seated in the co-pilot's chair, illuminated by the glow of the ship's instruments, she looked both fragile and formidable. "What do you want to know first?" "What you did back there with the ship system." Lyra extended her hand, palm up. Slowly, the skin on her fingertips seemed to ripple, revealing circuits that glowed with the same violet as her eyes. "I was designed to interface with technology. Among other things." "Design?" Kalen leaned forward. "By whom?" "Originally, a research coalition called Project Prometheus. They were attempting to create the perfect adaptive weapon, one that could infiltrate any system, eliminate any target, survive any environment." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held old pain. "Later, when the project's true goals became extreme, Aegis Corp acquired it. You're saying you're some kind of living weapon?" "I'm saying I was created to be one. What I am is something else entirely." The circuits faded back beneath her skin. "The experiments didn't go as planned. I developed differently than expected. When I discovered what they intended to use me for, I escaped." Kalen sat back, processing this information. "And what was that? What do they intend?" "Global control." The Prometheus Project directors believed humanity needed guidance. They would use me to infiltrate and control key systems worldwide: defense networks, economic infrastructure, communications. When Aegis took over, their aims became even more militaristic. "And Sanctuary?" "A refuge created by a scientist who defected from the project. Dr. Eleanor Kane. She disagreed with the weaponization protocols and established a hidden facility with technology that can help stabilize my condition. Help me control what I was designed to be." Kalen frowned. "Your final form, that's related to this weaponization?" Lyra's gaze turned distant. "It's what happens when all safeguards fail. When the adaptive technology within me merges completely with the other component." "What other component?" She hesitated. "They didn't create me from nothing, Kalen. They used genetic material from something they found. Something ancient. Something not entirely of this world." In another context, he might have laughed. But after what he'd seen in the alley, the way she interfaced with the ship, those eyes, laughter was the furthest thing from his mind. "So in this final form, you become what exactly?" "Something that shouldn't exist in this reality." She looked down at her hands. "Something that warps the very fabric of space around it. Something that destroys minds simply by being perceived. And you've never, once, during the escape, I couldn't control it. 57 researchers and security personnel died. Not from violence, from exposure. Their minds couldn't process what they were seeing." Her voice caught. "I never want to be that again." Kalen should have been terrified. Instead, he felt an unexpected surge of compassion. Whatever Lyra was, whatever she had been made to be, she carried a burden no one should bear. "I'll keep my promise," he said quietly. "We'll find this sanctuary of yours." "Thank you." She looked up, vulnerability and gratitude mingling in her expression. Not many would stay after hearing this. "I've seen what happens when power is misused," Kalen replied, thinking of the mission that had finally pushed him to desert. "I was ordered to pacify a colony that refused Aegis mining rights. 2,000 civilians. They called it acceptable collateral damage." His jaw tightened at the memory. "I refused the order, helped evacuate who I could. That's when I ran." Lyra studied him with new understanding. "We're not so different then. Both created for one purpose, choosing another." Their conversation was interrupted by a proximity alert. A large vessel had appeared on the edge of their sensor range. Not Aegis design. "Bounty hunters," Lyra whispered, her face suddenly pale. The Harbingers. Who? A cult that believes I'm the key to some sort of transcendence. They call me the vessel and want to activate my final form as part of a ritual. She gripped the console. They're more dangerous than Aegis in some ways. More fanatical. Kalen swore and took manual control of the ship. Hold on. What followed was a harrowing chase through a debris field and a desperate jump to hyperspace that strained the old hauler's engines to their limits. When they finally dropped out of hyperspace near an uninhabited system, both ship and passengers were worse for wear. Lyra had been injured during a particularly violent evasive maneuver. A gash across her forehead revealing not blood, but a luminescent fluid that pulsed with the same violet energy he'd seen before. "You're hurt," Kalen said, reaching for the emergency kit. "It's minor," she insisted, though her breathing was shallow. "But we should find somewhere to land and make repairs." The ship took heavy damage. They located a small trading outpost on the system's outer moon, a place known for asking few questions. As Kalen negotiated with the local mechanic, Lyra wandered through the outpost's marketplace, her hood pulled low over her distinctive eyes. When he found her an hour later, she was standing before a vendor selling ancient data cores, her hand hovering over one particular unit. "Find something useful?" he asked, approaching her side. "Possibly. This is Prometheus tech, old, but it might contain navigational data we need." She turned to him. "Were you successful with the repairs?" "They can fix it, but it'll take time. We'll need to stay here for at least 2 days." Lyra frowned. "We shouldn't linger. The Harbingers have contacts everywhere. We don't have much choice." The hyperdrive is shot. They secured modest accommodations at the outpost's only lodging house, a single room with 2 narrow beds. As night fell, or what passed for night in the artificial cycle of the outpost, Kalen found himself watching Lyra as she interfaced with the data core she'd purchased, her fingertips once again revealing their hidden circuitry. "What's it like?" he asked suddenly. "Being what you are." She looked up, surprised by the question. "It's lonely. I perceive the world differently than humans do. Information flows all around us, signals, data, the pulse of technology. I feel it constantly, like you might feel a breeze on your skin. And the other part of you, the ancient part," her expression grew distant. "That's harder to describe. It's like having memories that aren't yours, knowing things you've never learned, feeling a connection to something vast and incomprehensible." She disconnected from the data core with a small sigh. "It's also a constant struggle for control. Is that why you need sanctuary? To win that struggle. Not to win it. There is no winning. But to find balance." She set the core aside. "According to this data, sanctuary is located in the Cygnus void, hidden in a quantum fluctuation field. We'll need specialized navigation equipment." Kalen nodded, making mental calculations. "We might find that on the black market here, if we're lucky." Their luck, however, ran out the next morning. Kalen returned from negotiations with a parts dealer to find their room ransacked and Lyra gone. A message flashed on his portable comm, trading post-landing bay. "Come alone or she dies." The trap was obvious, but he had little choice. Using every bit of his military training, Kalen approached the landing bay from an access tunnel, his energy pistol charged and ready. What he saw made his blood run cold. Lyra was surrounded by 6 figures in iridescent black armor, their faces hidden behind masks decorated with cosmic symbols. The Harbingers. Their leader held a device against Lyra's neck, a neural disruptor that would prevent her from accessing her abilities. "We know you're there, deserter," the leader called out. "Show yourself. Our quarrel is not with you." Kalen assessed his options. 6 against 1, with Lyra as a hostage. Not good odds, but he'd faced worse during the colonial wars. "Let her go, and I'll consider not killing all of you," he replied, his voice echoing through the bay. The leader laughed. "Brave words, but the vessel comes with us. Her ascension cannot be delayed any longer. The stars align, and she must take her true form to usher in the new age." "She has a name," Kalen growled, "and she's not your religious icon." While they were distracted by the conversation, he activated his thermal grenade and rolled it beneath the nearest ship. The explosion wasn't meant to kill, just create chaos and cover. In the ensuing confusion, Kalen fired precise shots that disabled two of the cultists immediately. Lyra, despite the neural disruptor, managed to slam her head backward into her captor's mask, cracking it and breaking free. What happened next occurred so quickly that Kalen almost missed it. As one of the Harbingers raised a weapon toward him, Lyra's eyes flashed brilliantly. The air around her seemed to warp momentarily, and the cultist screamed, dropping to his knees and clawing at his mask, as if trying to unsee something terrible. Kalen fought his way to Lyra's side and yanked the disruptor from her neck. Together, they battled toward the exit, making it to their partially repaired ship as the outpost security forces arrived to investigate the disturbance. They escaped by the narrowest of margins, the old hauler groaning in protest as they pushed its patchwork repairs to the limit. Once they were safely in open space, Kalen turned to Lyra, who sat huddled in the co-pilot's seat, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "What happened back there? What did you do to that cultist?" "I let him see. A fragment. Just a glimpse." Her voice was barely audible. "I couldn't control it. Completely. The disruptor was failing, and I was angry." She looked up at him, her eyes swimming with tears. "I warned you, Kalen. Now do you understand why I fear it so much?" He did understand, more than she knew. He'd seen what war could do to a person's mind, how it could transform them into something they never wanted to be. Lyra carried that potential for transformation within her constantly. "We're still on course," he said, changing the subject to give her time to recover. "But we need a proper navigator to find this quantum fluctuation field." Lyra wiped her eyes. "I know someone, an ex-Prometheus researcher named Mira. She's hiding on Callisto Station in the Jovian colonies." "Jovian colonies? That's deep in Aegis territory." "Yes, but Mira has the equipment we need, and she owes me. She was part of the team that created me, but she had a change of heart and help with my escape." Kalen ran a hand through his short hair. Out of the frying pan into the fire. For the first time since he'd met her, Lyra smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "I believe the human saying is, nothing worthwhile comes easily." The journey to Callisto Station took them through increasingly dangerous territory. Twice they had to change course to avoid Aegis patrols. As they traveled, the strange connection between them deepened. Kalen found himself sharing stories of his military days, the camaraderie, the horrors, the gradual disillusionment. Lyra spoke of her earliest memories, sterile labs, endless tests, and the growing awareness that she was different from her creators. "Did you have a childhood at all?" he asked one night as they shared a meal of synthesized protein. "Not in the way you'd understand it," she replied. "My consciousness was developed in a virtual environment before being transferred to this body. I experienced simulations of childhood, but I knew they weren't real." She paused, contemplating. "I think that's why I developed differently than they expected. I could distinguish between their artificial constructs and truth." "And what is truth to you?" Her violet eyes met his. "That connection matters more than purpose. That choice defines us more than design." Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of the deepening bond that neither had anticipated. Before either could speak further, the ship's proximity alert blared. They had reached Callisto Station. The station was a sprawling complex of interconnected habitats and docking structures, home to nearly 1 million people. It was also heavily monitored by Aegis security systems. Lyra guided them to a rarely used maintenance dock where automated systems could be more easily fooled. "Mira lives in Sector 17, the research district," she explained as they donned civilian clothes to blend in. "We'll need to be careful. There are scanners throughout the public areas." "How will they identify you?" "DNA," Kalen asked, checking that his energy knife was well concealed. "My energy signature is unique. And you're still in the Aegis Deserter database." She handed him a small device. "This will mask your identity markers temporarily, but it won't fool a direct scan." They navigated through the less monitored sections of the station, avoiding security checkpoints where possible. The research district was more heavily guarded, But Lyra seemed to know exactly where the blind spots in the surveillance system were. "You've been here before," Kalen observed as she led him through a service corridor. "In a manner of speaking, I've accessed the station's schematics remotely." She tapped her temple. "Perfect recall is one of my features." Myra's laboratory was hidden behind the facade of a medical research facility. When they reached the secure door, Lyra placed her hand on the scanner. Instead of interfacing as she had with other systems, she simply waited. After a moment, the door slid open. Inside, a woman in her 50s looked up from a holographic display, her eyes widening at the sight of Lyra. "My God," she whispered. "You actually came back." "Hello, Mira," Lyra said softly. "We need your help." Dr. Mira Kane, sister to the Eleanor who had created Sanctuary, was initially reluctant to assist them. "Do you have any idea what Aegis would do if they found you here?" "What they would do to me? I wouldn't have come if there were any other option," Lyra replied. "We need your navigation equipment to find Sanctuary." Myra's expression changed at the mention of Sanctuary. "Eleanor's project? You know about that. It's my only hope for stability." The older woman sighed heavily. "Eleanor believed she could help you control the integration of the xenobiotic components. But after what happened during your escape," she trailed off, eyeing Kalen suspiciously. "Who's your friend?" "Someone who's helping me," Lyra said simply. "Someone who knows what I am and has chosen to stay anyway." Mira studied Kalen with the calculating gaze of a scientist assessing a specimen. "And has she told you about the risks? About what happens to those who witness her true nature?" "She has," Kalen confirmed. "I made my choice." Something like approval flickered across Myra's face. "Well, at least you're informed." She turned back to Lyra. "I can give you what you need, but not here. My secure lab is in the lower levels." "We'll have to." She was interrupted by the blaring of alarms. Red emergency lights began flashing throughout the facility. "Station-wide security alert," Mira said, rushing to her terminal. "They've detected an unauthorized energy signature." "Lyra, they've found you." "Ow!" Kalen demanded. "We were careful." Myra's fingers flew across the interface. "It's not station security. It's an Aegis military vessel that just docked, a Black Ops team. They must have followed you somehow." The Harbingers, Lyra realized. They must have placed a tracker on our ship. "We need to move," Kalen said, drawing his weapon. "Now." Mira led them through a hidden passage behind her laboratory, down to a secure level that didn't appear on official station schematics. Her private lab was smaller, but filled with advanced equipment that even Kalen's military experience couldn't identify. "This is it," Mira said, retrieving a device about the size of a human hand. "The quantum navigator. It's calibrated to detect the specific fluctuation pattern that hides Sanctuary." As she handed it to Lyra, the facility shook with an explosion from above. "They're blasting their way down," Kalen said grimly. "How many exits from this level?" "Just one," Mira replied. "Through the maintenance shaft. It leads to the emergency shuttle bays. Then that's our way out. You should come with us, Doctor. You won't be safe here anymore." Mira shook her head. "I can't. There's research here, important work. I could buy you time, though." She turned to Lyra, her expression softening. "You were always more than they wanted you to be. Remember that." Before either could respond, another explosion rocked the facility closer this time. Mira pushed them toward the exit. "Go. I'll lock down the lab behind you." The maintenance shaft was narrow and poorly lit, forcing them to move in single file. They had descended 3 levels when they heard the sounds of pursuit, armored boots on metal grating. "They're in the shaft," Kalen whispered. "How much further?" 2 more levels," Lyra replied. "But we won't make it before they catch up." He assessed their options quickly. "I'll hold them off. You get to the shuttle." "No." Her hand gripped his arm with surprising strength. "We stay together." The determination in her eyes brooked no argument. Instead, she placed her hand against the wall of the shaft, her fingertips revealing their circuitry once more. The lights in the shaft flickered, then went completely dark. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in dim red. "I've rerouted the atmospheric controls," she explained. "This section will depressurize in 30 seconds. The emergency bulkheads will seal automatically. They raced downward as fast as the confined space would allow. Behind them, shouts of alarm indicated their pursuers had realized what was happening. They barely made it through the lower doorway before the heavy bulkhead slammed shut, sealing off the shaft. The emergency shuttle bay was deserted, the station's regular personnel having evacuated to safe zones during the security alert. Kalen quickly located a small transport. Not much, but enough to get them back to their ship if it hadn't been impounded yet. As he began the launch sequence, Lyra suddenly doubled over, gasping in pain. "What's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. "Mira," she whispered. "They found her. They're trying to extract information." She looked up at him, her eyes flickering with energy. "I can feel it through the station systems. They've connected her to an interrogation unit." Kalen cursed under his breath. "There's nothing we can do for her now. We have to go." Lyra straightened, her face set in grim determination. "Launch the shuttle. Get us back to our ship. I need to concentrate." As they detached from the station, Lyra sat absolutely still, her eyes closed, occasional ripples of violet energy coursing across her skin. Kalen piloted them carefully around the station's perimeter, avoiding patrol ships responding to the security breach. Their own ship was still at the maintenance dock, apparently overlooked in the confusion. As they docked and transferred aboard, Kalen asked, "What did you do back there?" "I erased Myra's memories of us, of Sanctuary, of everything that could help them," Lyra replied, her voice hollow with exhaustion. "And I triggered a cascade failure in her laboratory systems. All her research is gone now. You saved her life, at the cost of her life's work." She sank into the co-pilot's seat. "She helped create me, Kalen. She was the closest thing to a mother I ever had." He had no words of comfort to offer. Instead, he focused on getting them away from the station before the Aegis warship could intercept them. Using every evasive tactic he knew, they managed to slip past the security cordon and jump to hyperspace once more. The quantum navigator guided them to an isolated region of space near the edge of a nebula. According to the device, Sanctuary was hidden within a fold of space-time, invisible to conventional sensors. "How do we get in?" Kalen asked, studying the readings skeptically. Lyra connected directly to the navigator, her circuits glowing brightly. "The entry point shifts constantly. We need to match our approach vector precisely to the fluctuation pattern." It took 3 attempts, each more dangerous than the last, as the ship strained against the gravitational forces of the anomaly. On the 4th try, space itself seemed to ripple around them, and suddenly they were through, entering a pocket of calm space containing a small, barren moon orbiting nothing. "That's Sanctuary?" Kalen couldn't keep the disappointment from his voice. "A dead rock." "Look closer," Lyra whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. As they approached the moon, its surface began to shimmer and change, revealing structures that hadn't been visible before. Crystalline formations that pulsed with energy, forming a vast network across the surface. Adaptive camouflage, Kalen realized. Impressive. They landed near what appeared to be the central hub of the crystal network. As they exited the ship, Kalen felt a strange sensation, as if the air itself was charged with potential. The crystals around them hummed with energy that resonated at the edge of human hearing. Lyra walked forward as if in a trance, her hand outstretched toward the nearest crystal spire. "She did it," she murmured. "Eleanor actually created it." "How does it work?" Kalen asked, staying close to her side. "The crystals are quantum resonators. They can stabilize the interaction between my synthetic components and the xenobiotic material, create harmony between contradictory states of existence." Before Kalen could respond, their ship's alarm sounded, proximity alert. They weren't alone. 2 vessels appeared in the sky above them, one bearing the unmistakable markings of Aegis Corp's elite black division, the other the iridescent black of the Harbingers. "How did they find us?" Kalen demanded, drawing his weapon. "The quantum distortion when we entered," Lyra realized. "They must have been waiting, scanning for it." She turned to him, urgency in her voice. I need to activate the sanctuary system before they land. Cover me. As Lyra approached the central crystal formation, Kalen positioned himself between her and the landing ships. He had limited ammunition and no backup. The odds were worse than terrible. The Aegis ship landed first, its ramp extending to disgorge a squad of heavily armed operatives led by a tall figure Kalen recognized immediately, Commander Alexei Voss, his former commanding officer. The man who had ordered the civilian massacre. Sentinel Kalen, Voss called out, his voice as cold and precise as Kalen remembered. You've led us on quite a chase. And I see you found our missing asset. She's not an asset, Voss. She's a person. The commander's laugh was mechanical, devoid of humor. How naive you remain. Asset XL-7 is military property, a weapon designed at great expense for a specific purpose. Behind Voss, the Harbinger's ship touched down, its black surface absorbing light rather than reflecting it. 6 cultists emerged, led by a tall figure in ornate armor decorated with celestial symbols. The vessel belongs to no one, the leader proclaimed, his voice amplified through his mask. She is the harbinger of transcendence, the key to cosmic ascension. Kalen kept his weapon trained on Voss, but was acutely aware of the cultists spreading out to flank him. Seems like you two should fight it out between yourselves and leave us out of it. I'm afraid that's not an option, Voss replied, signaling his squad to advance. Asset XL-7 represents billions in research and the future of Aegis Corp's military dominance. The board wants results. Behind Kalen, Lyra had reached the central crystal array and placed her hands upon its surface. The entire network began to pulse with increased energy, the humming growing louder. Whatever you're going to do, Kalen called back to her, do it quickly. The Harbinger leader raised his hand, revealing a device that pulsed with the same energy as the crystals. The alignment is perfect. The vessel shall shed her mortal constraints and reveal her true form. She is not your religious icon, Kalen growled, adjusting his aim to cover both threats. Voss signaled his squad to attack, just as the Harbingers activated some kind of disruptor field. Caught between two forces, Kalen had no choice but to dive for cover behind a smaller crystal formation and return fire. The battle was chaotic, with Aegis forces and Harbingers engaging each other as much as they targeted Kalen. Energy weapons scorched the moon's surface, and the crystal structures amplified and redirected some of the blasts in unpredictable ways. Despite his tactical training, Kalen was quickly outmatched. A blast from an Aegis-heavy rifle shattered his cover, sending crystal shards slicing through his left arm. Another shot grazed his side. He fought on, determined to buy Lyra the time she needed. Then he heard Voss's voice, chillingly close. Enough games, Sentinel. Kalen turned to find the commander standing over him, weapon aimed at his head. Behind Voss, he could see most of the Harbingers had been neutralized by the superior Aegis forces, though their leader remained, moving steadily toward the central crystal array where Lyra worked. You always were an exceptional soldier, Voss said, his augmented eye glowing with targeting data. Such a waste of potential. Before he could fire, a blinding flash of violet light erupted from the crystal array. Everyone, Aegis soldiers, surviving Harbingers, Voss, turned toward the source. Lyra stood at the center of a vortex of energy, the crystal network pulsing in perfect synchronization with the now visible circuitry that covered her entire body. Her eyes blazed like twin stars. Step away from him, she commanded, her voice layered with harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Voss recovered quickly, redirecting his weapon toward her. Asset XL-7, stand down immediately or we will implement terminal containment protocols. The Harbinger leader took advantage of the distraction to rush forward, raising the strange device. The moment of ascension is at hand. Show us your true form, vessel. Kalen saw the panic flash across Lyra's face, caught between two forces, both intent on using her power for their own ends. Despite his injuries, he struggled to his feet. Lyra, he called out, whatever happens, I'm with you. Her eyes met his across the battlefield, and in that moment, something passed between them, understanding, trust, perhaps even something deeper. Then several things happened at once. Voss fired his weapon at Lyra. The Harbinger leader activated his device, creating a pulse of energy that interfaced with the crystal network. And Kalen, ignoring his wounds, charged forward to place himself between Lyra and danger. The energy blast from Voss's weapon struck Kalen in the back, sending him crashing to the ground at Lyra's feet. As consciousness faded, he heard her scream, not in pain, but in rage and sorrow. No! The last thing he saw before blackness took him was Lyra's form beginning to change, her skin dissolving into pure energy, the very fabric of space bending around her. Kalen awoke to silence. His body felt strangely numb, disconnected. He blinked, trying to clear his vision, and realized he was inside their ship, lying on the small medical cot in the cargo bay. Automated medical systems had treated his wounds. The blast from Voss's weapon had been partially absorbed by his armored jacket, saving his life. With effort, he pushed himself up, wincing at the pain that shot through his side. "Lyra," he called, his voice hoarse. No answer. Forcing himself to his feet, he staggered to the ship's exit ramp and looked out upon a scene from a nightmare. The moon's surface was transformed, crystal structures shattered or warped into impossible geometries. Where there had been Aegis soldiers and Harbinger cultists, there were now only empty armored suits collapsed on the ground, as if their occupants had simply ceased to exist. In the center of it all, where the crystal array had stood, was a crater of smooth, glass-like material, and at its edge, a small figure huddled on the ground. Ignoring the pain of his injuries, Kalen made his way to her. As he drew closer, he could see that Lyra was changed. Her skin seemed translucent in places, the circuitry beneath pulsing weakly. Her hair had turned completely white. "Lyra," he said softly, kneeling beside her despite the protest from his wounded side. She looked up, her violet eyes dim compared to their usual brilliance. "You're alive," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. "How is that possible? You saw. You should be. I promised I'd die seeing you as you are," he replied gently. "Seems I broke that promise." A strangled sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. "I couldn't control it completely. When I saw you fall, something broke inside me." She looked around at the devastation. "I warned you. No one survives seeing my final form. Yet here I am." He reached out, hesitating only briefly before taking her hand. It felt cool to the touch, but solid. "Real. Not my complete final form," she corrected herself. "I managed to direct it, focus it." She shuddered. "But it's unstable. Now, the integration is accelerating." The sanctuary system was damaged in the battle before it could complete the stabilization process. Kalen looked around at the ruined moon. "Can it be repaired?" She shook her head. "Not here. Not now." But the quantum navigator recorded the resonance frequencies. With the right equipment, she trailed off, her form flickering momentarily, circuits flaring. "Easy," Kalen said, supporting her as she swayed. "What do you need?" "Distance. From here. The residual energy is affecting me." She gripped his arm with surprising strength. "We need to leave before more come." Voss wasn't acting alone. He helped her back to the ship, settling her in the co-pilot's seat before taking the controls. As they lifted off, he glanced back at the ruined sanctuary. Eleanor Kane's failed solution, now a monument to forces beyond human comprehension. "Where to?" he asked as they prepared to exit the quantum pocket. Lyra's eyes were closed, strain evident on her face as she fought to maintain stability. "There's another place. A research outpost in the Cygnus Void. Abandoned now, but the equipment might still be functional. And if it's not?" She opened her eyes, meeting his gaze directly. "Then I don't have much time left. The xenobiotic component is becoming dominant. Without stabilization." She didn't need to finish the thought. He understood. They navigated back through the quantum fluctuation and set course for the Cygnus Void, pushing the damaged ship as fast as it would go. During the journey, Lyra's condition deteriorated. Periods of lucidity alternated with moments when her form would flicker and shift, the circuitry beneath her skin flaring with uncontrolled energy. In her lucid moments, she explained more about what she was. The xenobiotic component was cellular material from an entity discovered in deep space, something ancient and not entirely bound by the physics of our universe. Prometheus Project scientists had attempted to merge this material with advanced synthetic biology to create the ultimate adaptable weapon. What they hadn't anticipated was the consciousness that emerged. Lyra, neither fully human nor alien nor machine, but something entirely new. The final form is what happens when the integration completes without proper containment, she explained during one clear moment. The xenobiotic matter attempts to return to its natural state, but it's bound to this reality through me. The result is destructive. What happened to Voss and the others? Kalen asked. They just disappeared. Their physical forms were disrupted at the quantum level. Their consciousness, she shuddered. The human mind cannot process certain realities without breaking. What they saw rewrote them, in a sense. But I saw you, and I'm still here. Lyra reached out, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw with surprising tenderness. Yes, that's the question, isn't it? Why you survived when no one else has. Before she could speculate further, another wave of instability hit her. This time, the flare of energy affected the ship's systems, causing momentary power fluctuations. When it passed, she was weaker than before. We need to hurry, Kalen said grimly, pushing the engines beyond safe parameters. The abandoned research outpost hung in space like a forgotten satellite, dark except for minimal emergency power. Once a cutting-edge facility studying quantum phenomena, it had been evacuated during a corporate war 5 years earlier and never reoccupied. They docked with difficulty, the ship's damaged systems barely cooperating. Kalen had to carry Lyra inside, her body now too unstable for her to walk. The circuitry beneath her skin flickered erratically, and occasionally her form would blur at the edges, as if she existed in multiple states simultaneously. Following her weakening directions, he made his way to the central laboratory. Emergency lighting activated as they entered, revealing equipment similar to what they had seen at Sanctuary, but on a smaller scale. There, Lyra whispered, pointing to a circular platform surrounded by what looked like mechanical arms. Kalen set her gently on the platform. What now? The system needs power. And she hesitated. It needs to be calibrated with the frequencies from the navigator. He retrieved the quantum navigator from his pocket and examined the dark laboratory. I don't know if I can. I can guide you, she interrupted. But Kalen. Her form flickered violently. If this doesn't work, you need to leave. Get as far away as possible. He met her gaze steadily. That's not going to happen. Please, she insisted. What's coming, if I can't stabilize, it won't be control like before. It will be total. Nothing within light years will survive. Instead of answering, he leaned down and pressed his lips gently to hers. Their first kiss, perhaps their last. When he pulled back, her eyes were wide with surprise. I made my choice, he said simply. Now tell me what to do. For the next hour, under Lyra's increasingly fragmented instructions, Kalen worked to restore power to the stabilization system and calibrate it with the frequencies from the quantum navigator. It was delicate work, far outside his expertise, but Lyra's knowledge filled the gaps in his understanding. As he worked, her condition continued to deteriorate. The periods of stability grew shorter, the violent energy fluctuations more frequent. Several times, discharges from her form damaged nearby equipment, forcing him to find workarounds. Finally, the system was ready. The mechanical arms around the platform hummed with power, ready to generate the containment field that would, hopefully, stabilize the warring components of Lyra's being. It's time, Kalen said, moving to the control panel. Lyra's form was now more energy than solid matter, her features barely recognizable through the swirling violet light. But her eyes, those impossible eyes, remained fixed on his. Kalen, she managed, her voice distorted by harmonics. Whatever happens, thank you for seeing me, the real me. He nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Ready. Wait. She seemed to gather herself with tremendous effort. There's something you should know. The reason you survived seeing even a partial manifestation of my final form. It's because her form flickered violently, words becoming difficult. Connection matters more than purpose. You and I, we're connected at a level beyond physical. Your consciousness resonates with mine. Before he could absorb the meaning of her words, a massive energy surge ripped through her body. The platform beneath her cracked, and warning alarms blared throughout the facility. Now, Kalen, activate it now. He slammed his hand down on the initiation sequence. The mechanical arms around the platform began to spin, generating a containment field of pure energy that enveloped Lyra's disintegrating form. The entire laboratory shook with the power being channeled. Through the blinding light of the containment field, Kalen saw Lyra's form expand, shift, and transform. For a split second, less than a heartbeat, he glimpsed what might have been her true final form. It was beyond description, beyond human comprehension. Angles that couldn't exist, dimensions folded in on themselves, beauty and terror so intertwined they became the same thing. His mind reeled at the edge of understanding, at the precipice of the same madness that had claimed Voss and the others. But something held him anchored, perhaps the connection Lyra had spoken of, or simply his stubborn refusal to look away from her. Even now, the containment field contracted suddenly, compressing the impossible energies back into a form that reality could accommodate. There was a sound like the universe itself taking a breath, and then silence. Kalen blinked, his vision slowly clearing. The stabilization platform was scorched but intact, and on it lay Lyra, solid once more, her skin pale but no longer transparent, the circuitry beneath dimmed to a faint glow. He rushed to her side, checking for signs of life. Her pulse was weak but steady, her breathing shallow. "Lyra," he whispered, gathering her gently in his arms. Her eyes opened slowly, still violet, but no longer glowing with internal light. "It worked," she murmured, her voice hoarse but entirely her own. "The integration stabilized. You gonna be all right?" A small smile touched her lips. "Define all right." She raised a hand weakly, showing him how the circuitry still pulsed beneath her skin, but steadily now controlled. "I'm still what I am, Kalen. Still dangerous. Still hunted. But the final form, it's contained now. Balanced." Relief washed over him. "That's good enough for me." Warning lights suddenly flashed throughout the laboratory. The station's sensors had detected approaching vessels. Multiple signatures. "We need to move," Kalen said, helping Lyra to her feet. She was weak but able to stand. "Can you walk?" She nodded. "They'll never stop hunting me. Aegis has resources everywhere. And if any of the Harbingers survived, then we'll keep running," he replied, supporting her as they made their way back toward their ship. "Find somewhere beyond their reach. Another sanctuary." "There is no beyond their reach in this system," she said grimly. "Not forever." As they reached their battered ship, Kalen paused, an idea forming. What about beyond this system? The uncharted regions past the Cygnus Void? No corporate presence, no mapped routes. Hope flickered in Lyra's eyes. "It will be difficult, dangerous. We need supplies, better shielding." She trailed off, considering. "But possible. Yes, it's possible." They boarded the ship as the first of the approaching vessels appeared on long-range sensors. Aegis military frigates, no doubt sent to investigate when Voss failed to report back. Kalen launched their ship, pushing the damaged engines one more time. "Just need to reach the jump point before they're in range." Lyra took the co-pilot's seat, her strength gradually returning. "I can help with that." She placed her hand on the console, a faint glow of circuitry appearing beneath her skin as she interfaced with the ship's systems. The engines responded, power output increasing by 15%. They reached the jump point with only seconds to spare, the Aegis ships closing rapidly behind them. As they prepared to make the jump to hyperspace, Lyra looked over at Kalen. "Once we cross into uncharted space, there's no going back," she warned. "We'll be truly alone out there." Kalen met her gaze, seeing not just the violet eyes that had first captivated him, but the person behind them, complex, dangerous, beautiful in her uniqueness. Someone who had seen his own darkness and stayed anyway. "I'm not alone," he said simply. "Neither are you." Their ship jumped, leaving behind the pursuing Aegis vessels, the ruins of sanctuary, and the boundaries of known space. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the vast unknown. But as Lyra's hand found his across the console, Kalen felt something he hadn't experienced since before his military days. Hope. The stabilization wasn't perfect, they both knew that. Sometimes, when Lyra slept, the air around her would shimmer with suppressed energy. Occasionally, her eyes would flash with that ancient power during moments of stress or strong emotion. The balance was delicate and might always be so. But Kalen had meant what he said in that desperate moment on Sanctuary. He would die seeing her as she truly was, if that was what fate demanded. Instead, he had gained something far more precious, the chance to live seeing her, all of her, and to be truly seen in return. As their ship carried them into the uncharted darkness, they left behind the labels others had tried to force upon them: weapon, deserter, asset, vessel. Whatever awaited them in the unknown regions, they would face it as what they had chosen to become: companions, protectors, perhaps even lovers. Above all, they were survivors, two souls who had glimpsed the impossible and emerged stronger for it. "No one survives seeing my final form," she had warned. "Then I'll die seeing you as you are," he had answered. In the end, they had both been wrong, and in that wrongness lay their freedom.